A tide of bodies, a sea of grasping hands and gnashing teeth, crashing against the last fortress of humanity. It's a sight made iconic in modern gaming by Saber Interactive, and nowhere is it more memorable than in their landmark title World War Z. The spectacle is breathtaking. Hundreds, even thousands of zombies, moving as one, climbing over each other to form grotesque writhing pyramids of flesh just to reach you. It's pure unfiltered chaos. And as you watch this unbelievable spectacle, a single logical question cuts through all the noise. How? How can a game possibly render 1,000 enemies on screen, each one an individual threat, without the hardware grinding to a halt? For years, this was the stuff of pre-rendered cutscenes, a fantasy that real-time gameplay couldn't touch. Most games had to fake it, using clever tricks and severely limited numbers to give you the illusion of a horde. But Saber Interactive? They didn't want to fake it. They didn't just add more enemies. They took their own in-house engine and engineered a brand new technology to solve a problem that other engines couldn't even fathom. In this video, we're breaking down the secret tech behind the horde technology that Saber has created, with a special focus on World War Z. We're going to pull back the curtain on the radical approach to AI that thinks like a fluid, and the core design philosophy that lets them make a tidal wave of zombies feel terrifyingly and unstoppably real. This is the Swarm Engine. To understand just how impressive the tech in World War Z is, we first need to appreciate why what it does is supposed to be impossible. Let's break down what just one enemy character costs a game engine. First, there's the model itself, a digital sculpture of thousands of polygons, wrapped in the texture that defines how it looks. Then you have the skeleton and the hierarchy of bones that are within it. An animation system has to constantly tell that skeleton how to move, blending seamlessly between walking, running, lunging, dying, etc. On top of that, there's the AI itself, the brain of every enemy. It needs to perceive the world, find a path to the player without getting stuck on a pebble, decide when to attack, and react to the player's actions. And we haven't even mentioned audio, particle effects, or the physics of its ragdoll when it finally does go down. All this costs processing power. Every single enemy is a little program, and your console or PC has to run hundreds of them simultaneously. For a long time, the solution was simple: don't have that many enemies. Think of classic shooters where you might fight a dozen enemies at most in a single area. Games that try to depict massive battles like Dynasty Warriors were famous for it, but had to make serious visual compromises. From a distance, the armies looked incredible. But when you close the distance, you'll realize that all these hundreds of soldiers are just window dressing. They aren't a threat to you, and they have no meaningful activities other than standing in place waiting for you to take action. They were more like moving props than actual threats. Even in modern games, developers have to be clever. Some will use 2D sprites at a distance, which are basically flat images that rotate to face you, but at a distance you can't tell, only swapping in a full 3D model when you get close enough. Others might cap the number of quote-unquote active AIs, so while you might see hundreds of enemies, only the 10 closest to you are actually thinking. The rest are just running placeholder logic until it's their turn. This is the wall every developer hits, the trade-off between scale and fidelity. You can have more enemies if they're dumber and uglier, or you can have smart, beautiful enemies, but only a few of them. And into this environment, Saber Interactive came along, inspired by the iconic imagery of the World War Z film, and said, we're gonna do it anyway. They realized that to deliver their vision of massive, overwhelming zombie hordes, even powerful third-party engines weren't built for the task without making those same compromises. So, they decided to build it themselves. They didn't just optimize the old way of doing things, they created a new way. The Swarm engine isn't a general-purpose engine like Unreal or Unity that had a crowd system bolted on. It's the branding for a suite of proprietary tech built into Saber's own engine, purpose-built from the ground up for one thing: simulating and rendering an absolutely insane number of enemies, which they pulled off quite well, as you can see in World War Z. The genius of Saber's approach is in how they reframed the problem. Instead of asking, how do we make 1,000 individual AIs run efficiently, they asked, how do we make a single massive swarm behave as if it's made of 1,000 individuals? This change in perspective is the key to Saber's success. In a developer diary for World War Z, Saber confirmed they treat the horde as a single organism, behaving like a fluid, a school of fish, or a flock of birds.
So we created our own engine called the Swarm engine. It allows us to have 500 enemies on screen all at the same time, not just as individual AI characters, but working as a network, like a school of fish or a flock of birds.
all the zombies on the scene are controlled as one single entity. However, when players start to interact with zombies, individual zombies spill off from the swarm and can attack the player individually.
A single bird in a flock isn't running complex calculations about the position of every other bird. It's following a few simple rules: align with your neighbors, avoid collision, and move toward the center of the group. When thousands of birds apply these simple rules, it becomes a fluid motion. Saber's horde tech applies a similar logic to the zombies. The massive horde in World War Z isn't 1,000 separate AIs all trying to calculate their own path to the players simultaneously. That would be computational suicide. Instead, a swarm AI acts as a macroorganism. It analyzes the environment on a large scale, identifies the objective, which is you, and calculates the broad, flowing path the horde will take, like water pouring through a canyon. The individual zombies within that flow have a much simpler job. Just follow the designated path and don't bump into the guy in front of you. This is a massive reduction in the complexity of what your processor has to calculate. Instead of 1,000 complex brains, you have one primary brain, the swarm itself, directing 1,000 much simpler bodies. But here's the magic that makes it all work. This doesn't mean the zombies are dumb. Saber implemented a brilliant second layer. While many of the on-screen zombies are directed as a single entity, the moment a player interacts with them by shooting into the crowd or simply being close enough, individual units spill off from the swarm. Suddenly, that zombie is detached from the collective. It's no longer just following the swarm's path, it's now a direct individual threat with its own agency, and it will try to get to you however it can, even if it goes against the rest of the swarm. It's the best of both worlds: the raw performance efficiency of a collective fluid, and the gameplay benefits of individual enemies. So, Saber has a clever system for the AI, but that's only half the battle. 1,000 moving statues aren't scary. The zombies in World War Z need to move, crawl, stumble over each other, and climb over each other to get to you. They need to feel alive and chaotic, and animating that many characters at once is its own technical challenge. In a traditional game, character animation is incredibly CPU intensive. The processor has to constantly update the position and rotation of every bone in a character's skeleton every single frame. If a character has 50 bones and you want 1,000 characters on screen, the CPU is suddenly juggling 50,000 bones 60 times per second. This is precisely why other games with large crowds have visual downgrades. You'll see distant enemies animating at a lower frame rate, or worst of all, moving in perfect robotic synchronization. Saber knew these compromises would shatter the illusion. Their solution was to offload as much animation work as possible from the CPU to the GPU. While the nitty-gritty details are a company secret, for good reason, I'd bet their approach involves a combination of GPU instancing and vertex animation. Let's start with instancing. Instead of the CPU telling GPU, draw a zombie, now draw another zombie, now draw another zombie 1,000 times over, it sends a single command, draw this zombie 1,000 times. To avoid the synchronized robot problem, the GPU then applies small, randomized variations to each instance. It can offset the start time of the run animation by a few fractions of a second, or slightly alter the animation speed. These changes might seem tiny, but when they're applied across thousands of zombies, it's what really sells the illusion of each zombie in the swarm being its own entity. The other key technique, I'm guessing, is likely a form of vertex animation. In traditional skeletal animation, the CPU tells the bones where to go, and the bones tell the model's vertices how to deform. With vertex animation, you essentially bake the animation data directly into a texture. The GPU, which is a master of parallel processing, can then manipulate the model vertices directly by reading this data, almost entirely bypassing that aspect of the CPU's job. The result is that even in the middle of a massive horde, you don't see the typical visual concessions that other games would have to make. And that's still not everything Saber had to worry about. Animating hundreds of zombies is one thing, but there's also managing them, creating them, destroying them, and keeping track of them all. This is where Saber's tech continues to shine, especially for making a game like World War Z run on such a wide range of hardware. The obvious way to handle enemies is to spawn a new one when it's needed and destroy it when it's killed. But when you're doing this for hundreds of zombies every few seconds, this constant cycle of creation and destruction is gonna give you a performance hit. Saber's solution, I bet, is a fairly simple one: object pooling. Imagine a restaurant kitchen. Instead of making a new plate from scratch for every customer, the kitchen keeps a large stack of clean plates. A plate is taken, used, and then returned to the stack to be washed. Object pooling in game development works in a similar way. The engine pre-allocates a larger number of zombie objects at the start and keeps them in an inactive pool, so to speak. When the game needs a new zombie, it just grabs one from the pool, activates it, and places it in the world. When that zombie is killed, it's just deactivated and returned to that pool, ready to be used again. This approach is going to be much more efficient than spawning and destroying enemies whenever they're needed or not, maintaining that smooth frame rate that World War Z is able to keep even during its most intense horde sequences. The result of all this tech is more than just a cool visual. It's a fundamental shift in gameplay, one that is perfectly demonstrated in World War Z. The horde technology in World War Z doesn't just enable more enemies, it's a different kind of enemy. If you've played World War Z, you know what I mean. When a swarm is charging at you, do you pick a zombie to aim at when you pull the trigger? No, you aim into the heart of the swarm, hoping you'll bring enough of them down to survive. This is the proof that Saber achieved exactly what they hoped for. The swarm itself becomes a character, a singular massive enemy that feels more like a force of nature than a collection of 1,000 zombies. This tech has birthed a gameplay loop completely defined by the sheer scale of the threat. In World War Z, the moment-to-moment gameplay isn't about tactical cover-based shooting or anything like that. It's about crowd control. It's about managing the flow of a literal river of the dead, using choke points, explosive, heavy weapons to thin the horde. The zombie pyramids are a perfect example, a unique gameplay scenario where you're not just shooting at targets, but at a dynamic, shifting piece of terrain that is actively trying to kill you. This technology has become a defining part of Saber Interactive's identity, having perfected this system in World War Z. It was a natural marriage, quote-unquote, to apply it to Space Marine 2. The chittering tide of a Tyranid swarm is the perfect analog for the zombie horde, finally doing justice to the scale of warfare described in the lore of that universe. As a brief aside, the evolution continued with John Carpenter's Toxic Commando as well, which applied the engine's capabilities to hordes of mutants, blending the familiar large-scale chaos with heavy vehicle-based combat as well, and some of their Mudrunner tech. The foundation laid by the Swarm engine for World War Z allowed Saber to master a unique space in the industry. They turned a technical solution into a design philosophy, creating games built from the ground up around the spectacle and challenge of fighting more enemies than any other game could ever hope to achieve. This level of technical innovation, this commitment to solving a problem that many others would simply design around, is what pushes the entire industry forward. The tech inside Saber's engine is a testament to what a focused team can achieve when they refuse to accept the supposed limits of the technology they have. If more developers were as innovative as Saber, the industry would be a gold mine of creativity, but sadly, most are content to operate within the limits they understand instead of pushing beyond them. If you enjoy stuff like this, diving into technology that powers our favorite games, make sure to subscribe. I want to do more stuff like this. So how does World War Z make 1,000 enemies feel real? It's the shift in philosophy. Stop thinking about 1,000 individuals and start thinking about a single unified swarm. This is where the difference lies. It's easier to direct one brain with 1,000 followers than 1,000 brains that think for themselves. Saber developed a multi-layered AI system to offload the processing requirements. They bypassed those traditional animation bottlenecks. They engineered a rock-solid foundation with smart resource management to ensure the performance stayed smooth. And they wrapped it all in a pipeline that lets designers wield the swarm as a creative tool, creating iconic moments like the zombie pyramids that no other game can match. Saber Interactive looked at a technical brick wall and engineered a sledgehammer to smash right through it. Their swarm engine technology is more than just impressive. It's become part of their identity, and it's an identity that no other game studio is yet able to match, allowing them to deliver experiences that no other studio possibly can. The legacy of this technology will be the moments it creates. The sheer panic of seeing a wave of bodies crest a hill in World War Z, and the pure awe of witnessing a tidal wave of monsters that feels against all logic completely real. And Saber has made it your job to deal with every single one of them.